What is going on, everybody? Today, I'm bringing you like halfway through a project. The project is actually the new duck blind for my boat. I'm going to go over what the idea, what the thought process is behind it, how I am building it, and I'll also go through some of the stuff of like how my inspiration, where I got to where I'm at, and if it's going to work or not. I'll jump right into it. So the blind material is Cordura 500D Cordura. It's supposedly pretty waterproof. I don't know, I'll find out. It's what the original blinds are made out of and what a lot of blinds are made out of. Some of them are actually made out of a 10 or a 1000D Cordura, which just, I think it's a higher thread count, but I'm not sure. As you can see, I kind of got another set of blind doors laid out here. I'll explain that in a minute. What's important is that we're using nylon thread in the sewing machine. This is just a home old Sears Kenmore machine that I'm using. It's been able to do it most of the way. It's not quite perfect, but it works. Now we're out here with the blind. All right, so as you can see, this started off as a beaver tail blind, which means that normally there's a pole here, a pole here, a pole that lays across this gunnel, and then another pole that mimics that comes up here. And then there's holes in the top. So essentially what I did is I removed the pole that would come here and then cut the blind. So there's actually a seam. So this is the back. Originally this piece of fabric here would have come up like this, and then there's a seam across the top and a seam across the front. I just cut those seams, and that makes it to where that fabric comes down. On the front of the blind, I just took a pair of scissors and cut it, so that way I could retain the sleeve that this bar goes in, because I didn't want to have to remake all that. And then these are two sets of the doors that I've already got done, so you can kind of see what's going on here. So essentially, each set of doors is one left and one right door. So it'll be a right door for one hole and a left door for the other hole. And the way this blind is going to be laid out is there will be a smaller hole back here that's going to be mostly used as a dog hole. We'll have a one-person hole here, another person hole there, and then a third person hole here. And then I will also put another dog door up front here. It's going to be the same thing, layout doors, but it's going to be a dog door. So that way, if I hunt 3 people, I can hunt the dog out of the back of the boat, which is way better because it keeps everything dry. But if we have 4 people hunting, then we'll put a person in that back hole and we'll sit a dog up here on the front deck. So these layout doors, this is the only one that's put together, so I'll try to show you. They're essentially like a layout blind. So right now there's a Velcro in the center and there's Velcro up on the top. And then when you're sitting inside of the blind, you just pop the doors open and then you're able to sit down and shoot. Because of the angle of the blind, it actually is a really, really nice shooting angle for either sitting down or standing up. And then when you stand up, you actually have no blind around you to like inhibit movement. And then when you're ready to go back, you just flip these shut. I don't have an extra hand to Velcro them, but you just Velcro the hole back up and you're ready to go. I still have to add stubble strapping to this. I did not have any. What I was going to do won't work. So the original plan was, you might be able to see it over there, I just bought like netting, and the netting was supposed to be used for like birds, to keep birds off of trees. But I have no way to sew the netting to this fabric. I tried it, it just didn't work out. So the other thing I should note here, let me climb up in the boat. This was the first door that I made. And so what I did was I cut this corner out of the fabric first, and then I like edged this mesh material. I edged it with the corner here to keep to be able to sew it together, and that worked out okay. You can see there's one spot here where it ripped already. But on the new blind doors, on the second renditions of them, I'm actually just cutting a square out of the blind door, and then I'm hemming the material in. So as I create the hem, I'm just hemming the material in on 2 sides and then running a stitch down the other 2 sides. The poles, these are actually just garden stakes. They kind of stay in here nice, but they're easy to remove. They're a sleeve that I sewed together and then sewed to the doors themselves. The other thing about this blind that I'm very excited about is I have this kicker here and there's another one in the back of the boat. But if I take those out, this side will fold down. And then that'll actually make it to where the blind will lay flat across the gunnels. So if it's laying flat, these doors become just normal layout doors. And I'm gonna use some dive bomb kickback chairs, and you'll be able to lay flat in the boat. So if we have like no cover somewhere, we'll still be able to lay flat inside of this boat. Another couple details I want to point out here is at the bottom, these are not sewed on yet. They're a safety pin. On the bottom, from the center line of the fabric, I'm gonna sew it 8 inches. And on the top, it's only going 2 inches on either side of the center line. I'll sew it, and then that'll make it to where the doors, it's kind of hard to see, kind of have like a an angle to them, so that way the doors, like the fabric's not as big. Like this chunk of fabric here isn't quite as big. The other thing is that the poles themselves are actually sewn in at an angle, which I can't really show you that right now. It's kind of hard. Maybe you can tell like how they come together, but the poles themselves are sewn in at an angle also. The other big advantage to this blind is that with just removing these poles, so if I remove these poles and take the kickouts out, the entire blind will still fold onto that gunnel and then be able to be tied up inside of the travel cover that Beavertail usually sells with these.
So this clip kind of came out pretty bad. So what I'm trying to explain here is that that's what the blind doors look like when it's open. Now I'm going to go through and close the doors up. Give me 1 second. Get the top closed up for us. And then now you can see just how concealed I am inside of this blind. You can pretty much see nothing. I even have on shiny sunglasses and it's hard to see. From birds, I've heard that they can't see through that mesh very well. I will end up painting the mesh so that way it's not just a black square. It'll end up looking tan. And I'm kind of showing off how far the visibility goes in the blind. You can't see behind you at all, and left and right is kind of hard. It just kind of depends on how you shift your head and stuff. The problem is that if you can see the birds can see you. So that's opening up the blind and shooting from a seated position. A lot of people find the seated position to be better, especially if you're a bigger guy, because the chairs do sit kind of low. And so it's a lot to kind of stand up out of the chairs. I think that I will end up standing a lot like that, which it shows there that the back of the blind is only like my elbow height with my arms down. So I have full visibility. I can move wherever I want to. I can shoot behind the blind, shoot in front of the blind. It doesn't really matter.
All right, so now I'm going to show you guys a little bit of how the blinds get built. So earlier I was talking about the piece of mesh and how they get hemmed in. So this is just a piece of mesh. As you can see, I measured this out. There's a 2-inch piece here, 2-inch piece here, which ends up making a 1-inch thick hem. So that gives me plenty of room to mesh over this like this. So this isn't quite laid out perfect. So essentially what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up my hem here, pin my hem in place, which will pin this piece of mesh in place. I'll set up my hem here, which will pin both of these pieces of mesh in place. I'll set up this hem, and then I'll sew those hems. And once I'm done sewing those hems, this piece of fabric is actually long. They come in sheets that are 60 inches wide. I only need one that's 47 inches long. So I'll sew this hem only down to about 48 inches. And then I'll cut it and hem the bottom to the right length for the blind doors that I need. After all that's done, I will sew in the 2 sleeves. They're actually right here beside me. So this is the sleeves that I had originally made. I just folded it over, sewed it at 7/8 of an inch hem, essentially. And then that gives me the tube that the things hold on inside of. And what I'm doing for these is, if I get it laid out, when the fabric is cut at the bottom, I'm putting the corner of the sleeve to the very corner of the hem, and then it'll follow up, and I'm making it to where the pole never covers this hole, but it comes as close as it can. And then just run that line up here, sew along that hem, and then you got your 2 pole things, cut off the excess fabric. So that's how I'm building these blind doors, essentially. Now, it's probably a good time to talk about where the inspiration came from this blind. The inspiration came from 2 things. It's probably been 10 years now, 5 to 10 years ago. I saw the Gator Tracks Gator Hide boats. And now if you're not familiar with the Gator Hide boat, I'll put a picture up here somewhere. But essentially what it is it's a John boat with a giant deck across it, and then the layout doors, you sit down underneath the deck essentially, and then there's 2 layout doors. But when the boat is like being driven around or whatever, it's just a big flat deck that you can walk across and everything else. And I like that, and when I was actually purchasing this boat, I had really thought hard about buying one. But the problem with those boats is that you're not usable as a boat. You know, I go out during the summer and I use this boat as a, you know, go to the beach and we go watch fireworks and we do all that kind of stuff with it. And I thought that the deck would make that kind of difficult to do, because then now everybody's sitting up higher. You know, you're not sitting down inside the boat, you're sitting up on top of the boat a little bit more. So I thought that the deck might make that harder. So that's actually why I decided not to get that boat. It seemed too specific built, too purpose built for me. Now, the next thing is a company called Fowler Boat Company and / Blinds, and they're no longer in business. And from what I understand, they sold the blind ideas to Gale Marine. So I'll put a picture maybe of one of their original blinds here, but they call them the 2-in-1. And essentially it's the same thing as that I'm building now, except for it's all aluminum for the most part, I guess I should say. So they had a catwalk that would go down the side of the boat. That's a part of the blind. Let me get my position here. And then the blind itself never could fold to one side. The blind would just lay flat across the boat when you were like driving around or whatever. And then when you wanted to hunt, you could either lay in the bottom of the boat, just like what I'm gonna do, or you could prop the back up, and that's how you got your 2-in-1 system. And I really like that blind. I actually know the original owner of Fowler Boat Company pretty well. I hunt with him pretty often, and he's had a couple boats with that style of blind on it, and I fell in love with them. I mean, like, they're amazing. 2 problems. First problem, they're expensiver as all get out. I don't know the exact numbers, but they're expensive. I think Gale Marine, they're building them now. I think they're over $5,000 for a blind, which is more than what I'm willing to spend. Second problem that I have with them is when the blind is flat across the gunnel, it's hard to get from the front to the back of the boat, because you kind of got to like hop between the doors or walk down the catwalk. So if like you're out in the middle of the water, you have to walk down a catwalk on the side of your boat, which I'm not a big fan of. Now that design is going to be stronger than my blind. That design is going to be warmer than my blind is. And then the third thing is that we hunt divers and stuff, and sometimes that blind, they leave the deck totally open, and then they just put like places to tie material onto it for blind material, but it's an open deck. So when you're putting out and taking up decoys, you have to be up on the front deck. And in really rough water, that's just, it seems unsafe to me. I like the idea of this blind where I could fold it all to one gunnel, and it's way out of the way. I mean, it's totally out of the way. I have a totally open boat to do what I want to do. So technically, if I want to go scouting, I can go scouting, all the blinds out of the way. It doesn't matter. Now, that's just my opinion, and that's how I got where I'm at. I just realized I never filmed an outro, so that's pretty much the building of the blind and the theory behind it. Hopefully I'll have a video of me completing it, and then it'll be out on its first hunts for teal season. We'll get the opinions of some of the guys I hunt with of what they think about it, and from there we'll make improvements as we needed. As always, we're trying to learn, we're trying to become better waterfowlers, and this is just the next step. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.